Galileo, father of astronomy. Two Tales of One Trial, a documentary by Pierce Griffin. Galileo was a very controversial man. His thoughts about Aristotle made him very notorious with the Church and the Inquisition of Rome. In this documentary, we will be discussing Galileo's life, his career, his education, and his beliefs. This documentary will be completely unbiased, and we will not take any side in considering the controversy of Galileo and his trial. Galileo. Galileo spends all of his time in his home in Florence, Italy, under house arrest. He uses his telescope to observe and write about the cosmos. He mentioned to us that his eyesight has become troubling, and hopefully it doesn't become too bad in the future. Galileo is considered one of the brightest minds to ever come out of Italy.
Where were you born?
I was born in Pisa, Italy, in February 15th, 1564. I'm rather old, it's hard to remember. Both my mother and my father were prominent musicians in Italy, where both of them raised me and my 5 younger siblings. I originally wanted to be a monk, but then my father wanted me to focus on a career in education. And growing up, I always believed the Aristotle view, but when I went to university, I quickly disproved my own beliefs.
What was your education like?
I was educated and I studied at the University of Pisa. There I studied medicine, but then I quickly fell in love with science and math and all things observational science. So then I began to self-teach myself. In fact, the ancient Greek mathematician Archimedes was actually one of my greatest idols. At there, I began to foolishly believe the Aristotle view, like the Church, but then after some studies I did, I began to quickly disprove that, as I mentioned before. And due to financial difficulties, I left in 1585 because, unfortunately, I'm not rich. I'm not a mediocre family or something.
What's your career like?
Well, after I left university, I supported myself financially with minor teaching positions. I began to teach geometry and math all throughout people who needed to learn it in Italy. But after I wrote and published a book called The Little Balance, which wrote about the hydrostatic balances and how to measure small quantities, I began to rise in fame, and this fame brought me a new teaching position in the university I previously left, the University of Pisa. After that, I started to do experiments with falling objects at the University of Pisa, and after I did these experiments, I began to realize that the Aristotle view was flawed, and then I realized there was a lot of holes in it, a lot of holes in his theory, and I began to realize it was just wrong altogether. And then once I began arguing this, a lot of my co-workers hated me for this, and I began to feel alienated. So after that, I of course left the university in 1592, and after that I got a new job at the University of Padua as a geometry teacher. But after I did that for a couple of years, I believe 1592 to somewhere else, I think the 1600, I'm very old, it's hard for me to remember this. I eventually left and became a court mathematician for the Medici family.
Could you tell us about the telescope?
Certainly, the telescope is certainly my most prized invention, but also my most notorious, as it got me in a very big amount of trouble. So in 1609, after learning about these Dutch eyeglass makers who made a telescope for sailing purposes, I eventually started to develop my own, but I actually increased its usability by 5 billion%. I used it so I could see the heavens and God's creation of life and study all the cosmos and whatnot. So in 1610, I left Padua after pointing my telescope to the heavens, and I found out the Earth was not the center of the universe. This revelation got me a more prominent job as a court mathematician, and I began to write about this in all certain ways. I wrote The Starry Messenger, was one of my most favorite books about the telescope and the two chief systems. But these books eventually supported the Copernicus view, and these books refuted the Aristotle view, which eventually got me in trouble with the Church. And then in 1616, I believe, yes, the Catholic Church eventually banned all of my books and all of my books about the works of the telescope.
What was your trial like?
My trial was very gruesome, was horrible, it was one of the worst experiences of my life actually. So after the book I wrote, the dialogue among two chiefs, this book completely refuted the Aristotle view and supported the Copernicus view, and it got me in a fairly bit of trouble. I was called for the Inquisition in late 1632 in Rome, and then 10 judges tried to interrogate me and torture me to try to get me to publicly admit that I did not believe in the Aristotle view, and if I did this, there would be great consequences. And I tried not to, but I admitted that I believe Copernicus view, and I did not believe Aristotle's view after they threatened me with torture, after they threatened me with everything gruesome in the book. And they treated me at first they actually treated me to very humane conditions, but as time increased and tensions rose, they made me stay in inhuman places and holding cells, and it was horrible. There's no way for a scientist like me to live.
Do you still believe in God?
Yes, of course I do. I always will be. You will always be watching over me. And all I want to do is learn everything about the universe and its cosmos so I can truly get an understanding of God's perfect image of the universe. And I want to spread that perfect image with everyone who needs to know. And unfortunately, the church doesn't see it that way. They just think he who should refute Aristotle should refute God and is a sinner. And that is unfortunately dim-witted and frankly idiotic.
What is your most famous quote from one of your books?
Famous quote. I would actually say one of my famous quotes was actually from a letter I wrote to the Grand Duchess of Tuscany in 1615. It was, I could not remain satisfied knowing that the injustices are still being supported by men of God. And this basically was talking about how unjust the church was, and I believe that's why it was so popular, because it really exposed how unjust the church was and how morally unrighteous it was.
After filming our interview with Galileo, we found a mysterious letter by our door. This letter basically said, "Please don't ridicule Galileo, and he's a hero and a genius." The only clue was it was signed by an anonymous woman of God. So who could have wrote this letter? A relative of Galileo? Or maybe a friend? No one knows. We asked Galileo about the letter. He simply said no comment, and he had no idea who could possibly write it. Inquisitor Bruno has agreed to interview with us today.
Before we begin, young man, would you like to buy some indulgences to get your loved ones out of purgatory?
No, thank you, Mr. Bruno. I have one question for you today. Do you think it was fair to put Galileo under house arrest?
Yes, I do think it's fair. He who will refute Aristotle will refute God. Yes.
What about the evidence in his books?
I don't care about evidence or his banned books. Galileo is a sinner, an idiot with a feeble mind, and a senile old man. Have you read any of his banned books?
Yes, I had to for the interview, sir.
You could be excommunicated. As a matter of fact, interview over. Interview over. Get out.
Unfortunately, Mr. Bruno was not a willing interviewee. In conclusion, Galileo was a very controversial man. Some believed he was good and discovered a lot about the cosmos, like the anonymous woman of God in the letter, and some believed he was evil just because he refuted Aristotle's views. What kind of man do you think Galileo was? Good or evil? Thank you for watching. I hope you learned more about Galileo's life. A special thanks to my mom and dad for helping me so much with this video.